Welcome to Module 5 of QART. We're going to be talking about how to construct a memory wheel and utilizing it. So this is a important module. I'm very excited about it because memory wheels are something that not a lot of people really understand, um,
Right.
and they were used a long period of time ago during the Middle Ages to really do some amazing things with people, but the knowledge has kind of since been lost, and it took a long time for um, the QART team to really assemble uh, the knowledge behind a memory wheel and how it was used, and then convert it in a way that we could utilize it in QART to achieve our goals. So
Right.
um, it's a fascinating tool. And so hopefully people will find the same um, passion in it that I have going through this program. Um, so memory wheels, they have a strong history, and it goes back to the Middle Ages as far as the written information about memory wheels. I would think they actually have been around much longer than that. They're kind of ingrained into just human consciousness
Right.
itself.
Mm.
And how I imply that they're ingrained in human consciousness is that when we look at the whole um, mind as a whole, we actually associate it as a wheel. And in that sense, neurologists and researchers have looked at the human mind through the neural pathways that it forms and the information and how the information is collected in the mind itself, and it turns into being a what looks like a donut. So they would call that a torus, right? And so it looks like a donut, and if you look at a donut from the side, it looks like a wheel with an open hole in the center, right? Which is kind of
Right.
interesting that our minds even create a wheel or a donut shaped and of how it associates information already. So um, I could imply that from that maybe that the association of how we look at the mind from our personal reflections into it, somebody down the line, maybe consciously or unconsciously, noticed that shape, right, and how information was dispersed, and drew it down on a paper as a wheel or a circle, right, and so many associations with the circle and how the relationship to the mind just by that, right? And then a wheel is essentially just circles inside of circles, right? And it
Right.
creates this type of wheel shape. Um, so you know when they were utilizing this in the Middle Ages, who was utilizing it, right? And the people that were utilizing these wheels were um, modern day alchemists, right? Or what we would
Right.
say were alchemists back then. And the alchemists of the time were utilizing it to um, for unknown reasons, really. Nobody really knows exactly what they're using it for, besides maybe fellow alchemists that have studied their works and understand them. And but most people don't have that kind of relationship to the information of alchemy, so they can't really put that together. Um, but what we do know is that in the utilization of memory wheels, um, what they're useful for today by modern people is they create the ability to associate with knowledge a lot easier. So we have something called mnemonic learning systems, right? And that's how the mind works, and we've talked about that before. Is that mnemonic is using symbols and objects and associating with something else. So a symbol that you understand, associating it with something else, and it's easier to recall that um, that thing that you're trying to um, recall, right?
Right.
And so modern day people are using memory wheels. They call them memory wheels to recall things. So they put a wheel out in a series, in a wheel format with various like segments coming off of the centerpiece, and it creates and they put symbols down, and then they would associate those symbols to the center object that they're trying to recall, and they'd build these relationships to that center object. And it made it so they could recall that center object a lot easier because that center object now has those associations to all these powerful symbols that they already have memorized. And so we're going to kind of do the same thing, but we're going to use it in a different way. Another thing about memory too is that memory during the time of these alchemists meant very different thing. So it actually memory um, was related to the ability um, to visualize something into the mind. So actually
Right.
to imagine. And somewhere along the lines, I don't know when, but memory, the definition of memory changed. So the real meaning of the word wasn't to like recall things that we think of memory as today. It was actually the ability to just visualize in the mind or imagine. So if we go back to the alchemists of the time and what they were using the memory wheel for wasn't to recall things. It was actually to have a better ability to imagine whatever object is they were associating things with. So they're trying
Okay.
to imagine it, right? And that's what we're going to be doing with our memory wheels is we're going to be using them as a visualization technique to achieve whatever the center object or symbol is that we've created, right? So um, the other aspect of using memory wheels though is the ability to recall things too, right?
Right.
So it's not to say that one doesn't do the other, right? They're both related. So the ability to imagine actually improves the ability to recall, and the ability to recall also improves the ability to imagine. So
Imagine.
they're related together, but um, you can do them both ways. So and another thing that people use today, and people can explore it, is they're called imagination palaces or memory palaces.
Right.
And there's lots of guides out there on how to use memory palaces in order to recall things as well. And they'd be equally useful for your ability to manifest your desires or your goal or achieve your goal as a memory wheel. But we chose a memory wheel just because of the simple relationship it has to the shape of our mind and how archetypes play out on it. It sounds like you have worked through some of this module in working with the memory wheels and seeing kind of how they're constructed and um, in a way. And uh, did it make sense to you how they're associated and put together?
Actually, yeah, actually, it did make sense. The understanding just the base of the wheel and the functioning of how the different areas are, that makes a lot of sense. What I need to understand is placement. Like, where do we start first?
Yeah,
That's what I need to know now. Is like, where do I go from that point on?
yeah. So here is an example of a memory wheel that I've made in the past. There's two of them, one smaller than the other, and there are examples in the um, worksheet that shows you um, various different types of memory wheels, segregations of them, and it to help you assemble it in a way that makes sense to you. So
Mm-hmm.
the basics of the memory wheel, though, is that you have a central location in the middle, and you have segments that run outside, right? And then you have different layers to the wheel. And the ones that we recommend that that you use have a main segment on the outside, an inner segment, and then the center location. And this one doesn't really have a center location. It just kind of has some
A
lines that come into
point.
point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so on the outside, here I had put archetypes. And in this case, I actually used tarot keys as archetypes. And the reason I use tarot is because tarot, I've been trained to use tarots and the associations to them um, I have a very uh, deep emotional connections to those now, and I associate those to archetypes as Jungian archetypes would be as well. So archetypes can be different for every person, right? There's an infinite amount of them essentially, but the tarot is a very, if you're trained in tarot, it's a very strong and an easy way to visualize, associate, and build a relationship to those emotional connections to those archetypes itself, and
Especially
then
since it's heavy in symbolism.
yeah, and know what that means. So
Right.
there's plenty of books on that subject.
Right.
Um,
You can also use things like rune symbols.
yeah,
You can use anything simple. I mean, if anything in a anything of your faith, you can utilize those
yeah,
if that's
absolutely.
something that needs to do. So those are just some other examples. The zodiac symbols. If you're drawn to the astrology and zodiacs, you can
Yeah,
use those types of things. So those are just some other examples too that can be used in these wheels.
exactly. Um, Yeah, and then in the next layer of the example, we use the emotional connection as the next layer. So the outer aspect is the archetype, and then inside it's the relationship to the archetypes and the emotion that it brings out on us, right? And
Hmm.
in this example, I used Hebrew letters associated with each tarot key. And as you go in, if depending on how many layers you have of your memory wheel, there's more associations to those uh, first layer archetypes. So the outer keeps diving deeper, deeper, deeper into the center, right? Um, so you can make it as complex as you want, or you can make it as simple as you want. Best start out probably simple with the examples we gave you, but
Right.
the point is outer big, big picture as you can get, and then start diving deeper, deeper into what each of those segments are, whatever those archetypes are, into the center uh, goal. So here's an example again. This one was 12 segments and 12 different archetypes. And then I created another one associated with
Oh
21
wow.
different archetypes, and then their associations all the way into a center. And again, I left a center blank um, because I didn't really know what to put there. So now I would put my five-pointed star into the center of here because that was my personal symbol that I associated with it. And then how to use this once we set this up is we want to look at all the archetypes that we have associations with, and we want to see how they relate to each other. So going back to like how to assemble it, right? Like
Hmm.
how to position these archetypes in a form that makes sense to you. Luckily for me, the tarot cards are already laid out in a very specific form that other people have done for me, right? So
Right.
it's useful in that way. In the example we have for the um, Jungian archetypes, it's also assembled in a circle too, so you can use that as an example. But for other people that don't necessarily want to follow that, a best way to start is to put something down in one's point, like say the hero, right? And then think about the opposite side, as opposite as you can get, right?
Hmm.
An odd number ones or even number ones, there's no opposite really. But
Right.
think about how the relationship is. This is difficult to do. How the relationship is between, say, the hero and the caregiver. Um, maybe they're opposite of each other, but you want to think of something that is kind of at a polar end of whatever the first archetype is, right? That you put
Right.
down, so that you can start assembling your wheel. Well, then maybe you have four segments. You're like, okay, I put one there, have one across, and then I have two other spots on the side. So what am I going to put here, and how do they relate to the hero and the caregiver, and oh, maybe this one relates there or should be over here, right? So
Right.
it's a very intuitive thing that you're going to be doing here, and it may not, um, maybe it feels right, maybe it doesn't feel right, use a pencil and eraser here because you might go back and erase things and put it in a different form that you feel better about. Maybe think about it, maybe you'll think about it for a day and be like, that's actually not how I like it. Maybe I like it over here. It feels better over here. Maybe you have a dream about it even, and you're like, oh, actually, they're
I gotta move
clearly,
these.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Right.
clearly not put in this position right. Maybe they're over here and here, right? So this is going to take a little work to and a little bit of change over time. But eventually you're going to start figuring out how each one of these things, these archetypes, associate with each other and create that wheel, right? And then inside the next layer of that segment, we're going to have the emotional association to that archetype, right? And uh, we already know that, I think, based on the work that we've done in the previous modules. So you can write in, um, say the hero and then its associated emotional energy that you feel with that. And then um, once you get that filled out in a basic form that you feel good about, then you want to put your central symbol, into the center.
Hmm.
Now
Right.
you brought up a good point. Maybe these symbols, maybe a rune or something like that, is on the outside. Maybe you associate the hero with an object that you like, even a physical object. You're like, oh, I have a little, um, I actually have like a little hero guy. Let me bring him out, and you know, oops, and there's my hero. He
Nice.
he's got a shield and everything, right? So
Hmm.
he's my hero, and I want to put him there. And every time I see that hero on this wheel, I'm like, okay, that's my hero. And how do I feel about the hero and its association with my center object, my center symbol, right? And I'm like, oh, my center symbol is heroic, in this way. I feel that connection to it.
Right.
Now, I can take off my hero object and I can put him back on in my house, and just
Yes.
like you did with your center symbol of the five-pointed star, now you
Right.
can look at your hero and think, oh yeah, there's the hero, and he or she is associated with my goal in this way, and it reminds me of my goal. I feel the emotional energy impacting my goal, and it reminds me, I am the hero. I can achieve this goal because of the hero, inside
Right.
me. So
Right.
you can see that relationship being built, and the the tool of the memory wheel is as a tool, right? It's a visual tool to see, oh, this is a layout of my mind, right? This
Right.
is how the archetypes in my mind influence me as a round aspect of my actual physical mind, right?
Right.
Neurologic even. And then inside is really what I desire, right? It's in the center of this wheel.
Hmm.
It's the center of my mind. It's the peace that I want. And I'm directing all this energy into one center piece, and I'm going to get that thing. I'm going to do that. And and you can see now how powerful that really is if
Oh
utilized
yeah.
in that way. Now,
Yeah, we
yeah.
don't use this tool in everyday society like we should. I think we see it more as graphs now in when it's used rather than like
Yeah, circle
this
graphs, yep.
direction, yeah, this directional energy wheel. I mean, that's essentially what it is. It's an
Yeah.
energy wheel. Hmm.
Yeah. Um, in some of the reading, we talk about the histories of memory wheels too, and some of them were, we've seen examples of memory wheels in the works of like Native Americans with medicine wheels, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it has the four elements and all this different aspect. And these things are ancient, like it's ancient because this is it's a symbolic representation of how we see reality, and
Right.
possibly greater than that, how reality actually expresses itself into us, right? As
In
a
us.
circle, like a circle going inward, right? Like a pie.
Right.
So
Hmm.
um, it's it's not just a wheel. It's a incredibly powerful tool if utilized. And the point is to use it. Uh, if you have to be more simple than complex, to use it and then make it more complex. So,
I was going to
my
say, if they wanted to, they could start out very simple, just break it up in a very simple way, and then you can keep making memory wheels as you keep each time you go through the court system. Each time you go through it and complete that again, build a different wheel, maybe a little bit more complex, and gradually get more in depth and depth. I think that might help some people so they don't feel so overwhelmed with trying to put something like this together because they may not be able to think that in depthly yet. So yeah, I would start simple.
Definitely, yeah. Um, and so I mean, the the use of this is to we talked about the last module about creating a ritual around it, right?
Right.
And so again, we want to ritualize this experience, this use of this tool, set up a time, if you possible, same time every day that you can visualize, you can work with the wheel, you can utilize it. Maybe you can change it around if you need to. Maybe you need to create a new wheel for every um, centralized goal that you're trying to achieve. It's a
Oh,
lot of
that's a good
work.
idea. Yeah, but if they're doing this, they don't mind the work. That's kind of
Right.
how
Yeah.
they're putting the work in. So I think that that's a good idea. Making different memory wheels for different whatever goals or things that you're working towards. That's a good
Definitely.
idea. Then you can have a library of memory wheels, and you can be like, I'm going to pull this one out today.
Yeah. So, um, I mean, I know this. The module work is the reading is fairly short because um, we want you to spend time working with the memory wheel, creating it, and really just engaging with that and associating your symbol with it. And the memory wheel is kind of like almost like the end process of court in a way, because it takes everything that we've learned about um, those those archetypes, the emotional feelings, the symbols of them, how they feel to each other, or how we feel about them in different ways, and our centralized goal and our ritual, and putting it in all into one final product that we can use visually even to really focus in and get the desired effect out of it, right? And we can see that finally, as a final product. And it's to me, it's amazing that it just all comes together into this one thing, and how amazing it is we have a tool that somebody made in the past that can do that for us. Um,
Right. It's like ancient knowledge.
yeah, yeah, you're learning some pretty cool stuff here.
It is pretty cool. It's simple, but I mean, it's effective. It works.
Yeah,
And that's the really cool thing about it is because if you put the time in, you do the work with it, you spend the quality time in putting this all together, you're going to see it. You're going to see the change. You're going to feel better. You'll think better. Like you'll think in ways that you don't normally probably have ever thought before because you're going to open up the quantum mind map and it's going to just keep going and it's amazing to see what comes out of it. It really is.
yeah. So that's great. I like how you put that quantum mind map. That's good. Um, so at the end of the module, we have again reflection questions. There's the daily discussion or the weekly discussions that you can be involved in and ask your questions, get your answers there. If you have trouble making your memory wheel, um, you know, people are going to be glad to help you with that. Um, maybe some people could share their examples of their memory wheels they've made, um, so that people can see, oh, mine are a little bit less complex than this crazy one that I put together, or even maybe more wild than anything I could possibly imagine.
Yeah, I'm real curious. I'm real curious to see what people will eventually be putting together.
Yeah,
I think that'll be fun to see how people map their own minds on a memory wheel,
yeah,
because that's, I mean, like I said, there's no right or wrong answers.
I know,
You
yeah.
build it, you use it,
I
I'm not
could,
going to use your memory wheel, and you're not going to
yeah,
use mine. But it's very interesting. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see other people's what they come up with.
yeah, yeah. I'll make sure to post some older memory wheels that were used in previous times that people can see and see uh, and go, ah, I understand now what those are.
Right.
Uh, you'll find,
Because we see them all over the place. You
right,
see them in pictures, you see them all over the
yeah,
place, and really, it's never been really explained anywhere in my history. That growing
no,
up, I mean, I've always known what a memory wheel was because I've always studied into other types of things, but like on a regular basis, no, I don't think it is
yeah,
something that they're like, this is memory wheel, this is what it's for, this is how you use it. They just use it as artwork at this point in time.
yeah. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, and my wheel
Okay.
had is some color. Colors bring out emotional feelings too. In
Hmm.
that, another thing that most people wouldn't maybe think about is music and song too. Um, so,
Absolutely.
say music is very impactful for you and it brings a lot of emotion out. A lot of people really do feel that way towards music.
Right.
And so you could actually draw out a wheel and put songs down. You could write them out if you wanted to, or draw a symbol even of that song, whatever fits your boat. And then say, oh, this song it should be placed here at that location, this other song here, so on and so forth. And then how do those songs relate to my center goal, right? And then you could listen to those songs throughout your day as a wheel,
That's a good idea.
and you'd be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, the feeling I feel from that. How does it associate with my center goal or my center symbol, so on and so forth, right? And again, I mean, and that brings up the center symbol. It doesn't have to be symbolized by a graphic, right? It could be symbolized by music too,
Right.
or
That's a good idea.
color, or
Yeah.
feeling. These are all just
Right.
layers to the same thing, right? So, um, depending on what layer you associate with, it's up to you. Clearly, like the more layers you associate to something, the more intense it's going to be. So,
Right.
the better the relationship to that thing is. So, so that's exciting. I'm really excited for people to take part in this module. In the next module, we're going to be talking about we're kind of starting to wrap up the QART system and
Right.
talking about practical applications in our lives, right? And how we can utilize the QART system as a practical experience and not something just we're working on as a video thing and we do this period of time and then uh, that's it. But I mean, we've talked about that in previous modules too of practical applications of it in some ways, but
Right.
we're really going to get deep into it. So I look forward to seeing you all in the next module and as we go through there and really start exploring how to take QART outside of the alchemical workshop that we've made into
Right.
the real world. So
Right.
look forward to seeing you guys there.